Commander Lyria Starweaver stood on the bridge of her exploration vessel, her silver eyes scanning the star charts before her. She was an elf, tall and graceful, with long dark hair that flowed like starlight. At her side, coiled around the command chair, was Ember. The dragon was ancient beyond measure, his scales shifting between crimson and gold depending on his mood. Together they had explored 100 worlds for the Celestial Dominion. The crew consisted of 12 different alien species, all working under the Galactic Accordance. They searched for new worlds, new resources, new allies. It was routine work, mostly. Lyria had been doing this for 30 cycles now. Science Officer Krell, an insectoid with compound eyes, suddenly chittered in alarm. His 6 legs clicked rapidly against the floor as he worked his console. Something had appeared on the sensors. Lyria moved to his station. The readings made no sense at first. A planet, uncharted, sitting in a region they had marked as empty space, but the data streaming across the screens made her blood run cold. Gravity reading at 1.3 times galactic standard. Atmospheric composition showing high levels of oxygen, a gas known to be corrosive and dangerous. Tectonic activity registered across the entire surface. Weather patterns showed massive storms brewing in 3 different regions. The oceans contained salt concentrations that would burn most species. Krell pulled up the biological scans. Thousands of species. Apex predators everywhere. Creatures with venom, claws, teeth designed for killing. Microscopic organisms that could invade a body and destroy it from within. Plants that produced toxins. Insects that swarmed in millions. The classification system ran its analysis. Class-20 Deathworld, the highest danger rating possible. Only 5 such worlds had ever been discovered, and all were marked as forbidden zones. Lyria should have ordered the ship to turn away immediately. Protocol was clear. Mark the location, file a report, and never return. These worlds were tombs waiting to claim victims. But then Ember raised his massive head. The dragon's eyes, ancient and knowing, fixed on the view screen. Through their mental bond, Lyria felt his curiosity mixing with concern. Something was wrong with this picture. She ordered a closer scan. Krell protested, his mandibles clicking nervously, but obeyed. The sensors pushed deeper, penetrating the atmosphere, mapping the surface. That was when they saw them. Structures, buildings, roads, energy signatures, artificial lights dotting the night side of the planet. Someone was living down there. The bridge fell silent. Every member of the crew stared at the impossible readings. A civilization on a Class-20 Deathworld. It made no sense. No species could survive such conditions, let alone build cities. Lyria ordered thermal imaging. The results came back within minutes. Thousands of settlements. Millions of life signs. The beings below were not just surviving. They appeared to be thriving. More detailed scans revealed even stranger behavior. The beings were swimming in waters filled with predators. They were climbing sheer cliff faces with minimal equipment. Some were jumping from aircraft, falling through the sky with only fabric slowing their descent. Krell suggested a hive mind species with no sense of individual survival, but Lyria disagreed. The structures below showed planning, artistry, individual expression. These beings knew what they were doing. Ember shifted, his serpentine body uncoiling. The dragon could change size at will, growing from massive to small enough to perch on a shoulder. He wanted to go down there. Lyria could feel it through their bond. He wanted to see these impossible beings with his own eyes. Against every regulation, against her better judgment, Lyria made a decision. She would lead a reconnaissance team to the surface. They would observe only, staying hidden behind their cloaking technology. They would learn what manner of creature could call a Deathworld home. She selected her best team. Warriors trained in stealth. Scientists equipped with portable scanners and, of course, Ember in his compact form. The dragon wrapped himself around her shoulders, no larger than a house cat, hidden beneath her dark cloak. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere. The ride was violent. The ship shook and rattled as it pushed through storm systems that would have torn lesser vessels apart. The gravity pressed against them, heavier than any of the crew were accustomed to. Two team members became ill from the stress. They landed in a dense forest. Lyria stepped out first, her boots sinking into soft ground covered in decaying plant matter. The air was thick, humid, filled with oxygen that made her feel slightly intoxicated. Every breath was richer than anything she had ever experienced. The sounds of the forest surrounded them, creatures calling, moving, hunting. Lyria counted 16 different predator species within 100 meters of their position. Any one of them could kill her team. Together, they should have been overwhelming. But as Lyria activated her cloaking field and led her team deeper into the woods, she realized something profound. This world was not just dangerous. It was alive in a way no other world she had visited could match. Every plant, every animal, every microbe was engaged in an endless struggle for survival. And somewhere in this chaos, an intelligent species had not just survived, but built a civilization. Ember stirred against her neck, his small form tense with anticipation. Through their bond, she felt his ancient wisdom processing what they were seeing. This world reminded him of something, of the old days, before species had tamed their homeworlds and made them safe. Lyria's scanner picked up movement ahead. Bipedal beings, similar in size to elves but stockier, more solid. They were setting up some kind of temporary shelter in a clearing. Her team moved closer, silent as ghosts. What she saw next would change everything she thought she knew about life, survival, and the nature of sentience itself. Lyria and her team crouched in the shadows, watching the bipedal beings with fascination and growing disbelief. The creatures called themselves humans, according to the translation matrix her team had deployed. They were setting up what they referred to as a camping site. There were 5 of them, young adults by their physical development. One female had bright red hair and introduced herself to the others as Katie Murphy. She moved with casual confidence, completely unaware of the 3 separate predators Lyria had identified within striking distance of their clearing. The humans were doing something that made no tactical sense. They were deliberately sleeping on the ground, in the open, surrounded by dangers. They built a fire, drawing attention to their location. They laughed and talked, making noise that would alert every carnivore in the region. Krell, monitoring from a safe distance, sent a data packet to Lyria. The humans were consuming toxins. They were drinking something called beer, which contained ethanol, a cellular poison. They were eating capsaicin, a chemical weapon produced by plants, and claiming it added flavor to their food. Ember, still wrapped around Lyria, was transfixed. The dragon had lived for 3,000 years and seen countless species, but these humans puzzled him. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom. Their teeth were flat, useless for combat. Their skin was soft and easily damaged. Yet they sat in the forest as if they owned it. One of the humans, a male, told a story about something called a bear encounter. He had apparently come face to face with a massive predator and had simply backed away slowly until the creature lost interest. The others listened and laughed, sharing similar tales of dangerous wildlife encounters as if they were amusing anecdotes. Lyria ordered her team to follow the humans when they broke camp the next morning. The group hiked to a nearby town, walking for hours through terrain that would have exhausted most species. The humans complained occasionally about sore feet and tired legs, but they never stopped moving. The town was a revelation. Humans lived in permanent structures, had developed complex technology, and had organized themselves into a sophisticated society. But what struck Lyria most was how they interacted with their Deathworld. She watched a human child, no more than 6 cycles old, playing in a yard. The child climbed a tree, lost his grip, and fell from a height of 3 meters. Lyria tensed, ready to see the broken body of an infant. Instead, the child hit the ground, cried for perhaps 30 seconds, then got up and continued playing. The fall that would have killed most juvenile species had merely bruised the human child. Their bones were dense, their bodies designed to absorb impacts that would shatter other beings. In the town center, Lyria observed humans keeping predators as pets. They had domesticated wolves, turning them into creatures they called dogs. These animals lived in human homes, played with human children, and obeyed human commands. The humans had taken an apex predator and made it family. The team spent days gathering data, cataloging human behavior. They learned that humans climbed mountains for recreation. They jumped into water from great heights for amusement. They deliberately placed themselves in dangerous situations and called it sport. But they also observed something else. Humans cared for each other. They helped their elderly and weak. They created art and music. They had built hospitals to heal their sick and schools to educate their young. They were not mindless survivors. They were a thinking, feeling species that had somehow made peace with their nightmare world. Ember sent a thought to Lyria through their bond. These beings were like dragons in a way. They had conquered their environment, not through evolution giving them weapons, but through intelligence and determination. They had survived by refusing to quit. The mission took an unexpected turn when a human female began watching them. Her name was Rebecca Hayes, and she had military training according to the data Krell pulled from local networks. She was a tracker, someone who hunted other humans for sport in controlled competitions. Rebecca had noticed the shimmer in the air where their cloaking fields disrupted light. She had seen footprints that appeared from nowhere. She was studying them, piecing together the puzzle of invisible visitors. One evening, Rebecca walked directly to where Lyria was concealed and spoke calmly into the empty air. She said she knew someone was there. She said she meant no harm. She asked them to reveal themselves. Lyria made a decision that would have ended her career if her superiors had known. She deactivated her cloak and stepped into view. Rebecca did not scream or run. She looked at the tall elf with silver eyes and the small dragon perched on her shoulder, and she simply nodded. Then she invited them to a nearby diner for coffee. Sitting in a human establishment, drinking the bitter stimulant beverage humans loved, Lyria learned the truth about Earth. That was what they called their world, Earth. Rebecca explained how humans had evolved in constant competition with their environment, how their ancestors had been weak, slow, and vulnerable. So they had developed brains capable of creating tools, how they had learned to hunt by running prey to exhaustion over days, how they had survived ice ages and supervolcano eruptions and asteroid impacts that had killed most life on the planet. She showed Lyria pictures on her portable communication device, humans swimming with massive sharks, humans scaling frozen mountains, humans diving into active volcanoes to study them, humans going into space in primitive rockets, risking death to explore the unknown. Lyria asked why they did these things. Rebecca smiled and said it was because they could. Because the challenge was there. Because pushing limits was what made them human. Then Rebecca dropped the real revelation. She showed Lyria images of human space stations orbiting Earth. Human ships capable of faster-than-light travel. Human colonies being planned for other worlds in their system. Humanity was not a primitive species clinging to survival on a death world. They were an emerging spacefaring civilization that had mastered their impossible planet and were now looking to the stars. Lyria felt the weight of this knowledge settle on her. She had to report this to the Celestial Dominion. But she also knew what would happen when the galactic powers learned about humanity. Some would see opportunity, others would see threat. She transmitted an encrypted message to her superiors that night. It was brief, but contained all the essential information. New spacefaring species discovered. Humans. Origin world Class 20 Deathworld. Threat assessment required immediately. Notable trait, complete absence of fear regarding death. The response from the Celestial Dominion came within 2 days. Report to the Council of 12 Species immediately. Bring all data. Prepare for formal inquiry. Lyria had expected this. She had broken protocols, made unauthorized contact, and revealed the existence of the Galactic Accordance to an unknown species. But she had also done her duty by reporting a potential new spacefaring civilization. The news of humanity spread through the galactic community faster than Lyria had anticipated. Within a week, every major species had received the basic information. Earth, Class 20 Deathworld, humans, spaceflight capability. The reactions varied wildly. Some species were curious, wanting to meet these remarkable survivors. Others were terrified, seeing humanity as an existential threat. The Dracon Empire, a militant reptilian species that prided itself on military prowess, began making ominous statements about preemptive security measures. The Council of 12 convened in an emergency session on the neutral station of Harmony Point. Lyria attended with Ember, who had resumed his full size for the occasion. The dragon was as large as a small spacecraft, his presence a reminder of ancient power. Also in attendance was Mira Chen, a human diplomat hastily appointed after first contact became inevitable. She had arrived on a human ship that had crossed the galaxy in a fraction of the time it should have taken. Human faster-than-light technology was apparently more advanced than anyone had expected. Mira stood before the council and presented humanity's case. She was calm, professional, and utterly unintimidated by the assembled representatives of 12 powerful species. Lyria noted that several council members seemed unsettled by her confidence. The presentation Mira gave was meant to reassure the council. Instead, it terrified them. She showed videos of human history, wars fought across their entire planet, weapons capable of destroying cities, soldiers fighting in deserts, jungles, frozen wastelands, and underwater. She showed athletic competitions where humans pushed their bodies to the breaking point for glory and entertainment. She showed extreme sports where humans deliberately placed themselves in mortal danger for excitement. She showed something called the Olympics, where the entire species celebrated those who were fastest, strongest, and most capable of defying death. The council watched in growing horror. One representative from a peaceful aquatic species fainted when shown footage of human mixed martial arts. Another from a fragile avian species had to leave the chamber when Mira showed videos of human mountain climbing. But Mira was not finished. She explained human history of survival, how their species had endured 5 major mass extinction events on their planet, how they had survived ice ages by developing fire and clothing, how they had hunted massive predators to extinction using only primitive spears and group tactics. She told them about the Toba supervolcano eruption that had reduced human population to perhaps 10,000 individuals, and how they had rebuilt and spread across their entire world within a few thousand years. She explained how humans had survived plagues, famines, and natural disasters that would have ended most species. Lyria watched the council members as they processed this information. She saw fear in their eyes. These were species that had evolved on gentle worlds, that had never faced true existential threats. They had developed spaceflight through slow, steady progress on planets that nurtured them. Humanity had clawed their way to the stars from a world that tried to kill them daily. The Dracon representative stood and addressed the council. His name was Commander Zrask, and he was a decorated military leader. He argued that humanity represented a clear and present danger to galactic stability. Zrask presented his own analysis. Humans had developed nuclear weapons before achieving spaceflight. They had created artificial intelligence, biological weapons, and chemical weapons. They had technologies specifically designed to kill their own species in massive numbers. What would such a species do when they encountered other civilizations? Zrask asked. Would they bring their violent ways to the peaceful galaxy? Would they export their Deathworld mentality and turn the stars into a battlefield? The council debated for hours. Lyria was called to testify about her observations on Earth. She spoke honestly about what she had seen. Yes, humans were capable of violence. Yes, they had developed terrible weapons. Yes, they came from a world that had forged them into survivors. But she also spoke about Katie Murphy sharing food with strangers, about Rebecca Hayes choosing to communicate rather than report the alien presence to her military, about human children playing and laughing despite living on a death world, about art galleries and concerts and libraries filled with human knowledge. Ember added his own testimony, speaking directly into the minds of all present. The dragon had lived 3,000 years. He had seen species rise and fall. He had bonded with Lyria because he saw strength and honor in the elves. Now he saw something similar in humanity. They were young, raw, and yes, dangerous. But they were also brave, curious, and capable of great compassion. They had survived not by becoming monsters, but by working together and refusing to surrender to their environment. The council remained divided. The peaceful species wanted dialogue and cultural exchange. The militant species wanted containment or preemptive action. The debate grew heated, with accusations and counter-accusations flying across the chamber. Then news arrived that changed everything. The Draken Empire had mobilized its fleet. 300 warships were moving toward Earth's location. Zrask stood and announced that the Draken had acted to protect galactic security. They would force humanity to surrender their spaceflight technology and submit to Drakon oversight. If humanity refused, the Drakon would destroy their orbital facilities and set them back to a pre-spaceflight level of development. It was for the good of the galaxy, Zrask claimed. Mira Chen received an emergency communication on her device. She listened for a moment, her expression never changing, then addressed the council. Earth had detected the Drakon fleet 3 days ago when they entered human sensor range. They had been tracking them ever since. Admiral Lisa Martinez, commander of the United Earth Defense Force, sent a message through Mira. Humanity did not want war. They had come to the stars hoping to find friends and allies. But if the Drakon insisted on attacking, they would discover that humans had not survived a death world by being weak or unprepared. The message ended with a simple statement. Earth was ready. Lyria felt a chill run through her. She looked at Ember, and through their bond, she felt his concern. The dragon sent her a private thought. If the Drakon pushed humanity into a corner, they would learn what it meant to fight a species that had survived the unsurvivable. Lyria made a decision that would define the rest of her life. She defied direct orders from the Celestial Dominion and took her ship to Earth. She would stand with the humans, not because she was ordered to, but because honor demanded it. Ember agreed with her choice completely. The dragon had chosen humanity as worthy, and he would not abandon them now. Together, elf and dragon set course for the death world. They arrived to find Earth preparing for war in a way that shocked Lyria to her core. The planet that had seemed so peaceful and undefended had transformed. Hidden weapon systems were coming online across the solar system. Admiral Lisa Martinez met with Lyria aboard the Earth Defense Station. She was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen combat. She thanked Lyria for the warning, but explained that humanity had been ready for this moment since they first left their planet. Lyria asked what she meant. Martinez took her to an observation deck and pointed at the moon. That was not just a natural satellite anymore, she explained. It had been hollowed out over decades and converted into a fortress. Inside were railguns, missile batteries, and enough firepower to crack a planet. Mars had similar installations. The asteroid belt had hidden military stations disguised as mining operations. Saturn's moon Titan housed a shipyard that had been building a defensive fleet for 20 years. Humanity had watched the stars and wondered if they were alone. When they realized they probably were not, they had prepared for the possibility that first contact might not be friendly. Every science fiction story, every alien invasion movie, every military simulation had contributed to Earth's defense planning. Martinez showed Lyria the human fleet. It was smaller than the Drakon Armada, only 80 ships to their 300, but the human vessels were strange. Designed around principles that made no sense to conventional military doctrine. They were built to withstand incredible damage. They had redundant systems upon redundant systems. They could operate with 70% casualties and keep fighting. They were designed by a species that had learned on a Deathworld that survival meant refusing to quit no matter how bad things got. The Drakon fleet entered Earth's solar system broadcasting their ultimatum: surrender all faster-than-light technology, submit to Drakon oversight, or be destroyed. Admiral Martinez sent a simple response: no. The battle began at the edge of the solar system. The Drakon expected to sweep through human defenses quickly. They had superior numbers, advanced weapons, and centuries of military tradition. What they encountered instead was a nightmare. The human defensive positions were not where sensors said they should be. The asteroid belt was a death trap, with camouflaged weapons platforms activating as soon as Drakon ships came in range. Human pilots flew with maneuvers that should have killed them. They pulled turns that generated forces no other species could survive. Their ships were not faster or more powerful than Drakon vessels, but the humans flew them like they had nothing to lose. Katie Murphy, the camping enthusiast Lyria had observed, was now Lieutenant Murphy, leading a strike fighter squadron. She and her pilots used tactics that seemed insane. They flew through debris fields at speeds that left no margin for error. They made attack runs that brought them within meters of enemy ships. One human pilot, his fighter crippled and dying, aimed his ship at a Drakon cruiser and rammed it at full speed. The explosion took out both vessels. The other human pilots did not hesitate or mourn. They pressed their attack with cold efficiency. Lyria joined the battle, her ship fighting alongside human vessels. Ember took his full dragon form and engaged Drakon fighters in space combat. The sight of an ancient dragon breathing fire in the void of space shocked both sides, but Ember had made his choice. He fought for humanity. The Draken realized they were not facing a primitive species. They were fighting survivors who had spent their entire existence learning to overcome superior opponents. Humans did not fight fair. They used every advantage, every trick, every psychological weapon at their disposal. Martinez ordered the deployment of something called psychological warfare. Human ships began broadcasting across all frequencies: heavy metal music, horror movie soundtracks, and the recorded sounds of Earth predators filled Drakon communication channels. Species that had evolved on peaceful worlds found the sounds of tigers roaring, wolves howling, and human war cries utterly terrifying on an instinctive level. Several Draken ships experienced panic among their crews when exposed to recordings of human laughter mixed with predator calls. But humanity showed something unexpected as the battle turned in their favor. They showed restraint. When Drakon ships surrendered, human forces accepted and provided medical aid. When escape pods launched from destroyed vessels, human ships moved to rescue survivors. Admiral Zrask, his flagship crippled and his fleet in retreat, could not understand it. Why did humans spare defeated enemies when they clearly had the power and will to destroy them? Martinez answered him directly over an open channel. Because humans knew what it meant to lose, to be beaten, to face extinction. They had compassion for the defeated because their own history was filled with defeat and survival. They were not monsters. They were survivors who had learned when to fight and when to show mercy. The Drakons surrendered. The battle was over. Humanity had defended their world against an overwhelming force and won. The aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves through the galactic accordance. The Draken Empire, a military power that had never been defeated, had been beaten by a species from a single planet. The implications were staggering. Lyria became the mediator between humanity and the galactic community. Her actions during the battle, fighting alongside humans despite orders, had made her a controversial figure. The Celestial Dominion recalled her to stand trial for treason. She did not return alone. She brought Rebecca Hayes, Katie Murphy, Mira Chen, and Admiral Martinez as witnesses. Ember accompanied them in his full, magnificent form, making it clear whose side he was on. The trial was held before the full Council of 12. Lyria stood accused of disobeying orders, aiding a potential enemy species, and risking galactic security. The charges could result in her permanent exile and loss of all rank. Lyria defended herself with quiet dignity. She had followed a higher calling than orders, she said. She had acted with honor when her superiors chose fear. She had seen something in humanity worth protecting, worth believing in. Rebecca testified about human culture beyond their capacity for war. She brought examples of human art, music, literature, and philosophy. She explained how a species that faced daily death had developed a profound appreciation for life and beauty. Katie spoke as a representative of ordinary humans, not soldiers or diplomats. She talked about camping trips that had seemed so strange to Lyria during first contact. She explained that humans did not hate their death world. They loved it. It had made them who they were. She described hiking through forests, swimming in oceans, and climbing mountains as ways humans reminded themselves they were alive. The danger was not something to fear, but something to respect and overcome. That mindset had shaped everything about human civilization. Mira presented humanity's formal proposal to the Council. Not membership in the Galactic Accordance, which would require them to follow laws they had no part in creating. Instead, a partnership, an alliance between equals. Humans would share their technology, their resilience, and yes, their military capabilities. In exchange, they wanted access to galactic knowledge, resources, and the friendship of other species. They wanted to explore, to learn, and to contribute to the larger community. Admiral Martinez made a promise on behalf of Earth. Humanity would defend not just their own world, but any world threatened by aggression. They would be the shield for species that could not defend themselves. They would be the sword against those who preyed on the weak. The Council debated for 3 full days. Some species remained terrified of humanity. Others saw opportunity. The Drakon, humbled by defeat, argued that humanity had proven themselves worthy of respect through honorable combat. Then Ember spoke. The ancient dragon had never addressed the full council before. When his telepathic voice filled the minds of everyone present, they listened with awe. He had lived 3,000 years, he told them. He had seen countless species and civilizations. He had chosen to bond with Lyria because he saw in the elves a fierce spirit worth preserving. Today, he saw that same spirit in humanity, burning even brighter. They were young, dangerous, and unpredictable. But they were also brave beyond measure, curious beyond limit, and capable of compassion that humbled him. The galaxy could reject humanity and make enemies of the most formidable survivors to ever reach the stars. Or they could embrace humanity and gain allies who would never abandon them, never surrender, and never stop fighting for what was right. Ember had made his choice. He stood with humanity. The Council would have to make their own. The vote was close, but it passed. The Terran Partnership was established, a new framework that recognized humanity as an independent power within the galactic community. Not subjects, but partners. Lyria was stripped of her military rank for disobeying orders, but she was granted a new title, Ambassador to Terra. She accepted without hesitation. She would continue building bridges between her people and humanity. The story ended with a celebration on Earth. Species from across the galaxy gathered in New York City for the first interspecies cultural exchange. Alien visitors experienced Earth's heavy gravity, tried human food, and watched in amazement as human children played fearlessly. Lyria and Rebecca stood together on the observation deck of the rebuilt orbital station. They had become friends during the long months since first contact. Ember perched nearby in his small form, content. Rebecca asked if the galaxy would ever truly understand humans. Lyria smiled and said probably not, but that was what made humanity special. They were the Deathworlders who taught the galaxy that survival was not about avoiding danger, but about facing it with courage. Rebecca invited Lyria camping the following weekend. There was a spot in Yellowstone, an active supervolcano with grizzly bears and geothermal features. It would be perfect. Lyria laughed, a sound that still felt new after months on Earth. She accepted eagerly. She had learned from humanity that life was meant to be lived, not just survived. As the sun set over Earth, Lyria reflected on how much had changed. She had come to study humanity and ended up learning what it truly meant to be alive. The galaxy would never be the same, neither would she.